There is a simple Shaolin principle, quiet on the outside, powerful on the inside, that can rewire your mind, shift your energy, and reveal the unseen strength already living within you. This principle is not magic, but it feels like magic once you experience it. Picture this: a mountain stands unwavering against the wind. The wind howls, storms rise, seasons change, yet the mountain does not react. It only remains. This is the trick: stillness before movement, awareness before action. When you learn to pause, to observe your own thoughts instead of chasing them, something incredible happens. Your mind stops being your master and becomes your tool. Too often we think we must fight harder, push harder, try harder, but the truth is far more profound. Transformation begins not when you add more force, but when you remove unnecessary noise. Clarity sharpens your purpose. Purpose ignites your discipline. Discipline shapes your destiny. Imagine waking up tomorrow with a mind that is aligned instead of scattered. A mind that follows your direction. A mind trained not by pressure, but by presence. The Shaolin method is simple: stop, breathe, witness. In that stillness, you interrupt your old patterns. In that pause, you reclaim your power. In that breath, you begin to rewire your brain for focus, resilience, and strength. And once your inner world is aligned, your outer world has no choice but to follow. So today, I challenge you: take one moment of stillness, one conscious breath, one deliberate pause. Practice it daily, even if only for a few seconds. That small habit will become your discipline. Your discipline will become your transformation, and your transformation will become your freedom. Stand up for your mind. Stand up for your future. Take this step. Begin the rewiring today. Key point 1 centers on the profound yet deceptively simple idea of stillness before movement and awareness before action. This principle is not merely a poetic concept. It is a neurological reset, a psychological shift, and a spiritual grounding practice woven into centuries of disciplined training. At its core, it teaches that the mind, when left untrained, behaves like a wild horse, reactive, impulsive, and prone to running in every direction at once. But with intentional stillness, the same mind becomes focused, deliberate, and unshakable. To expand this, imagine what happens in the first few quiet seconds of your day. Most people wake up and immediately absorb chaos. Notifications, obligations, unfinished tasks, noise before clarity. They are already in motion before they have even decided where they want to go. But practicing intentional stillness interrupts this unconscious momentum. By pausing, even for a brief moment, you reclaim ownership of your mental space. That pause is the gateway where thoughts slow down just enough for you to observe them. And once you observe them, you gain something far more valuable than motivation. You gain awareness. Awareness is transformative because it reveals the difference between what you think is urgent and what is truly important. It sharpens your perception of your internal world, uncovering patterns you may have repeated for years without noticing. Perhaps you react defensively in conflict, or procrastinate when pressure rises, or absorb stress without releasing it. These habits feel automatic because they have been reinforced by years of repetition. But in the Shaolin approach, the moment of stillness becomes the wedge that disrupts these old patterns. You begin to notice the subtle tension in your shoulders, the rushed nature of your breath, the stories you tell yourself about what you can or cannot do. That awareness alone begins to shift your neurological pathways. This is where the rewiring begins. The brain changes through repetition, yes, but it also changes through recognition. The instant you become conscious of a habit, you weaken its grip. When you observe a negative thought before it spirals, you create a microsecond of choice. Do you follow that thought into stress, fear, or self-doubt? Or do you release it and replace it with clarity? Stillness creates this moment of choice, and every time you choose differently, your brain adapts. Neural pathways reorganize themselves. Synapses weaken or strengthen. What used to feel like an automatic reaction becomes an intentional response. Stillness also strengthens discipline, not through force, but through grounding. When you train your mind to pause before acting, you cultivate the ability to remain centered in challenging situations. You stop being pulled by external pressures. You start moving through life with stability and confidence. This is why elite martial artists appear calm in the face of intensity. They have trained themselves to respond from awareness instead of instinct. That same power is available to anyone willing to practice. By returning to this quiet space again and again, you develop an inner steadiness that is difficult to shake. You begin to trust your decisions because they are made from clarity. You begin to trust yourself because you are no longer operating on autopilot. Over time, the practice of stillness doesn't just influence your mind, it reshapes who you become. Key point 2 revolves around the understanding that clarity sharpens your purpose and purpose ignites your discipline. This idea may seem simple on the surface, but when examined deeply, it becomes clear that most struggles people face, whether emotional, professional, or personal, stem from a lack of clarity rather than a lack of strength or talent. Clarity is the foundation upon which every meaningful action, every disciplined habit, and every transformation is built. Without it, even the most motivated person will eventually lose direction, because motivation without purpose is like fire without oxygen. It burns briefly, then fades. Clarity begins with recognizing what truly matters to you, not what others expect, not what society glamorizes, and not what fear pushes you toward. It is the process of stripping away noise, distractions, and inherited beliefs until you uncover the raw truth of what you value and what you want. This is not an overnight revelation. It comes from the quiet moments where you reflect deeply, listen inward, and become honest about your intentions. When clarity emerges, even in a small form, it feels like a light switching on in a dark room. Suddenly, you see your path more clearly. You recognize what aligns with your inner direction and what pulls you away from it. Once you gain clarity, purpose naturally follows. Purpose is not simply a grand mission or a life-changing calling. It is the steady inner direction that guides your choices. It is the reason behind your actions, the meaning behind your effort, the fuel that makes discipline sustainable. Without purpose, discipline feels like punishment. With purpose, discipline becomes devotion. When you know why you are doing something, the difficulty of the task no longer intimidates you. Instead, it becomes part of the path you've chosen, and you meet it with strength instead of resistance. Purpose also transforms how you handle challenges. Instead of seeing obstacles as signs that you are on the wrong path, you recognize them as necessary steps toward growth. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" This shift in mindset is profound because it rewires your relationship with discomfort. You stop avoiding difficult tasks and instead engage with them because they hold meaning. Purpose gives you the emotional endurance to stay committed even when progress is slow or invisible. From this place of purpose, discipline transforms from a chore into an expression of who you choose to be. Discipline is not about perfection, it is about consistency. It is the repeated decision to act in alignment with your clarity and purpose, even on days when you don't feel like it. When discipline is rooted in purpose, it becomes a natural extension of your identity rather than a forced behavior. You begin to take ownership of your actions, your time, and your attention. You prioritize what matters because you understand its value. This alignment, clarity feeding purpose, purpose fueling discipline, creates a powerful internal momentum. You no longer chase motivation because you are guided by a deeper force. You become more intentional, more centered, and more capable of following through. And although the world around you may remain chaotic, your inner world becomes a place of direction and stability. Key point 3 explores the transformative power of reclaiming your mind through observation and choice, a principle that lies at the heart of true mental mastery. Most people live in a state of autopilot, reacting to circumstances, emotions, and external stimuli without fully realizing it. Thoughts surge like waves, sometimes carrying us toward fear, doubt, or anger, and yet we mistake these reactions for reality. The power of this Shaolin principle is that it teaches the mind to pause, observe, and choose consciously, rather than be swept along by instinctive responses. Reclaiming the mind begins with the simple yet profound act of noticing your thoughts before they dictate your behavior. This practice is deceptively simple. Stop and witness. It may be a fleeting moment at first, a pause in your breath, a subtle awareness of tension in your body, or a quiet acknowledgement of a thought before it grows into a cascade. Most people underestimate the impact of this pause because it feels so small, almost imperceptible. Yet it is in this micro moment that the seeds of transformation are sown. When you observe a thought rather than immediately react to it, you create a space between stimulus and response. This space is where choice lives. It is where you can decide whether to feed fear or nourish confidence, whether to dwell on frustration or shift toward clarity, whether to surrender to chaos or anchor yourself in calm. Through repeated practice, the brain begins to rewire itself. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity, the mind's ability to form new pathways and strengthen certain patterns through repetition. When you consciously choose how to respond to a thought instead of reacting automatically, you are effectively remodeling your neural circuits. Over time, reactive patterns weaken while deliberate, mindful patterns grow stronger. This is how the mind shifts from being a source of limitation to a tool of empowerment. The more you practice observation and conscious choice, the less your mental state is dictated by external pressures, past experiences, or ingrained fears. Reclaiming your mind also cultivates emotional resilience. When you are able to pause and witness your internal landscape, emotions lose their tyrannical grip over you. Anger no longer erupts uncontrollably, anxiety becomes a signal rather than a sentence, and stress becomes a cue to center yourself rather than a trigger for panic. This resilience is not passive, it is an active, deliberate force. You learn to navigate challenges with presence and clarity, responding with strategy rather than reaction, with composure rather than chaos. Another aspect of this principle is the deepening sense of personal freedom. So often people are enslaved by habitual thought patterns, worrying about the future, ruminating over the past, or clinging to imagined limitations. By observing your thoughts and consciously directing your focus, you regain autonomy over your mental landscape. You no longer give power to every passing worry or fear. Instead, you cultivate a state of inner authority, where your choices reflect your true values and intentions rather than external noise. The cumulative effect of reclaiming the mind is profound. You become the architect of your thoughts, the director of your focus, and the master of your reactions. Each pause, each observation, each conscious choice strengthens your ability to navigate life with clarity, calm, and power. Over time, this practice transforms the mind from a restless battlefield into a disciplined, flexible instrument, capable of immense focus, creativity, and resilience. Key point 4 delves into the extraordinary power of habit and repetition in shaping not only your mind but your entire life. Habits are the silent architects of destiny, often unnoticed yet profoundly influential in determining the quality of our actions, thoughts, and outcomes. Many people underestimate the significance of small repeated actions, thinking that monumental change requires monumental effort. In truth, it is the consistent, deliberate practice of small actions that rewires the brain, strengthens discipline, and transforms ordinary behavior into extraordinary results. Habits, when aligned with purpose and clarity, become the bridge between intention and mastery, converting fleeting motivation into sustained achievement. The human brain is naturally wired to conserve energy. It favors repetition because repeated actions require less conscious effort over time, allowing the mind to function efficiently. This efficiency is a double-edged sword. It can serve when our habits are constructive, or it can limit us when our habits are unproductive or self-sabotaging. When a person repeatedly reacts impulsively, procrastinates, or entertains negative thoughts, the brain reinforces those patterns, making them more automatic and difficult to disrupt. Conversely, when one intentionally cultivates positive habits, the brain forms new neural pathways that strengthen over time, making constructive behavior increasingly natural. This is why mastery is not built in sporadic bursts but in the quiet, persistent repetition of aligned actions. Repetition works not only on a mechanical level but also psychologically. Each time you engage in a deliberate practice, your mind internalizes a sense of capability and progress. You begin to trust your ability to act consistently, which in turn fuels motivation and self-confidence. The compounding effect is remarkable. Small actions repeated daily accumulate into transformative skill, mental resilience, and unshakable discipline. In this way, the act of repetition itself becomes a form of training the mind to embody strength, patience, and focus. Habits also serve as anchors during challenging times. Life is inherently unpredictable, filled with moments of stress, doubt, and distraction. When the mind is trained through disciplined repetition, it can rely on habits as stabilizing forces. A single breath practiced thousands of times can calm anxiety. A repeated routine of reflection can sharpen decision-making. A consistent physical practice can fortify resilience. These habits create a mental and physical structure that supports action even when external circumstances are chaotic or overwhelming. Moreover, repetition reinforces identity. Every repeated action signals to the brain who you are and what you value. Over time, these actions become inseparable from your sense of self. If you practice courage, focus, or mindfulness daily, these qualities are no longer external goals but internalized aspects of your being. The mind begins to operate from this new identity, making alignment with purpose and discipline effortless rather than forced. The key to unlocking the full potential of habit lies in intentionality. It is not merely the act of repetition, but the conscious alignment of each repeated action with clarity, purpose, and mindful observation. When habits are practiced with awareness, they are not mechanical. They become a dynamic process of self-cultivation, rewiring the brain, strengthening discipline, and forging resilience. Through deliberate repetition, the ordinary becomes extraordinary, the fleeting becomes permanent, and the mind itself transforms into a disciplined instrument capable of sustaining excellence and mastery over time. Key point 5 centers on the profound idea that mastery of the mind and body comes through integration, the harmonious alignment of thought, action, and awareness. True transformation is not achieved by focusing without mental presence can become hollow repetition. Integration is the process of uniting these elements so that each supports and reinforces the other, creating a state of complete harmony where effort becomes effortless and potential unfolds naturally. This principle emphasizes that the mind and body are not separate entities, they are interconnected systems, each influencing the other in subtle yet powerful ways. When the mind is trained through stillness, awareness, and deliberate choice, body begins to respond differently. Movements become precise rather than rushed, reactions become measured rather than impulsive, and endurance grows not merely through physical strength but through mental focus. Similarly, physical training, whether through martial arts, breath control, or disciplined movement, enhances cognitive function, emotional stability, and mental resilience. The body becomes a vessel through which the mind expresses clarity, discipline, and intention. This reciprocal relationship underscores that mastery is not about isolated skills, but about the seamless coordination between thought and action, awareness and execution, internal focus and external movement. Integration also cultivates a heightened sense of presence. Most people move through life fragmented, with attention scattered across multiple directions, planning the future while reliving the past, reacting to stimuli without conscious intention. The practice of integrating mind and body trains attention to dwell fully in the present moment. Each breath, each posture, each deliberate action becomes an anchor, drawing the mind away from distraction and into a state of full engagement. In this way, integration is not merely functional, it is transformative, reshaping perception so that each experience, whether challenging or ordinary, is met with clarity, precision, and composure. This principle further emphasizes the importance of rhythm and flow. In integrated practice, there is no rush, no wasted motion, and no mental resistance. Movements are synchronized with breath, thought is synchronized with action, and awareness permeates every gesture. This rhythm strengthens focus, amplifies energy, and minimizes friction between intention and execution. Over time, integration becomes second nature, allowing a person to operate at a level of efficiency and effectiveness that feels effortless, yet is the product of countless deliberate practices. Integration also reinforces resilience. When mind and body are aligned, challenges no longer overwhelm, they become opportunities to apply discipline, awareness, and adaptability simultaneously. Emotional turbulence is mitigated by physical grounding, while physical fatigue is offset by mental focus. The alignment creates a stabilizing force that allows a person to persist through adversity, remain centered under pressure, and recover more quickly from setbacks. Each challenge faced through integration strengthens the connection between mind and body, reinforcing the neural and muscular pathways that sustain mastery. Finally, integration fosters a deep sense of empowerment and autonomy. When thought, action, and awareness are harmonized, a person is no longer reactive to external circumstances, but proactive in shaping their reality. Decisions are informed by clarity, actions are executed with precision, and awareness allows for continual adjustment and refinement. The synergy between mind and body generates momentum, amplifying progress, enhancing focus, and cultivating a state of being where potential is fully realized and the individual operates with both power and grace. Key point 6 focuses on the transformative force of consistency and commitment, the quiet yet unstoppable drivers of long-term change. Many people underestimate the power of showing up every day, believing that breakthroughs require sudden extraordinary efforts or flashes of inspiration. In reality, it is the steady, disciplined repetition of intentional actions that rewires the brain, strengthens character, and transforms potential into tangible results. Consistency is not merely about performing a task repeatedly, it is about creating an unbroken chain of effort that signals to the mind, body, and spirit that transformation is not optional, it is inevitable. The first aspect of this principle is the neurological impact of sustained practice. The human brain is malleable, constantly forming and pruning connections based on experience. When you act consistently, neural pathways that support skill, focus, and resilience are reinforced while unhelpful or self-limiting patterns weaken. Each deliberate action repeated day after day becomes encoded into the brain as a default response, eventually operating with minimal conscious effort. This is the foundation of mastery, the ability to act skillfully and effectively without hesitation because your mind and body have been trained to respond with precision
and discipline.
In essence, consistency turns effort into habit, habit into skill, and skill into an ingrained part of identity. Commitment is the inner force that sustains consistency. While motivation can fluctuate with mood, energy, or circumstance, commitment is anchored in purpose and clarity. It is the decision to act regardless of how one feels in the moment, because the long-term vision outweighs temporary discomfort or distraction. Commitment fuels persistence when results are slow, when progress feels invisible, or when obstacles appear insurmountable. It is what allows a person to maintain focus and effort, even in the face of adversity, knowing that incremental actions compound into significant transformation over time. Without commitment, consistency becomes sporadic, unreliable, and insufficient to produce meaningful change. Consistency and commitment also cultivate momentum. Each day of aligned action reinforces confidence, sharpens skill, and strengthens self-trust. The compounding effect is subtle but powerful. Small victories accumulate, discipline solidifies, and the mind begins to anticipate success rather than doubt it. Over time, this momentum becomes self-reinforcing, making it easier to continue acting in alignment with purpose. Even on days when motivation wanes, the force of accumulated consistency carries the individual forward, creating a rhythm of action that is resilient to external challenges. Another dimension of this principle is the emotional and psychological resilience it fosters. By committing to consistent practice, a person develops patience, tolerance for discomfort, and the ability to navigate uncertainty without being derailed. The repeated experience of overcoming minor obstacles strengthens mental fortitude, teaches adaptability, and instills confidence that challenges can be met without surrender. This resilience is not a passive state, it is an active cultivation of strength, focus, and determination that supports every subsequent action. Consistency and commitment also shape identity. Each deliberate act reinforces who you are becoming, signaling to the mind that you are disciplined, capable, and aligned with your purpose. Over time, this internal reinforcement transforms behavior into a natural expression of self, where excellence, focus, and resilience are not external goals but inherent qualities. The integration of repeated intentional action with unwavering commitment produces a compounding effect, forging mastery that is both profound and enduring. Compounding effect, forging mastery that is both profound and enduring.